You guys might remember that clapped out old 351 that I picked up for dirt cheap and started to rebuild. Well, have you ever heard of the snowball effect? This right here is the definition of the snowball effect. I was hoping to do just a stock bottom end rebuild, see what kind of power you can make from just a factory board 351 Windsor with some heads in the cam basically. We got tearing into that motor and we found out that a couple of the cylinders had some rust pitting that we couldn't get out with a simple ball hone tool, and so therefore the block needed to be machined. After we found out that I had to bring it to the machine shop, I figured I at least wanted to prep the block the right way. I had them do what's called a race prep, which is basically they blast the block, clean it up, check it for cracks, deck the head surfaces, line hone the main bearing caps, basically go through the whole thing and put freeze plugs, oil gallery plugs, and we had them go 30 thousandths over the stock bore. My original plan, since we had to go over the stock bore, was thinking maybe I could do a budget 393 stroker, which would consist of using a Foxbody 302 style piston, stock rods, and an Eagle cast stroker crankshaft. I sat down with my machinist and we talked about a cost breakdown in terms of how much it would be to use stock parts, get them cleaned and machined and balanced to the rotating assembly versus buying new stroker parts. At the end of the day, we decided to go and build a 408 stroker. We still went with a budget-friendly cast Eagle crank with a 4-inch stroke, Eagle H-beam rods. For pistons, we went with a Mahl piston or Molly. We went with a 28cc dish. I went with the dish over a flat top because I wanted to keep the compression ratio on the lower end. One, to run it on pump gas and not have to worry about finding the best of the best fuel. Still keep this a streetable car. I'm sure this motor is going to make more than enough power NA, but I wanted to plan for the future for the possibility of adding some boost to it, whether that be a turbo, which I already have a kit for, or if we play around with nitrous or a supercharger or whatever. I have a feeling sometime in the future we will be adding boost to it, but I really want to run this car NA and see what kind of power this motor will make. This is my very first ground up build. I've never done this kind of build before by myself, and I've also never had any high horsepower cars. I've daily driven a Jeep since high school and that's got under 200 horsepower. So to be honest, I don't know what 400, 500, 600 horsepower feels like in a car. It'd be interesting to see once this motor is done in the car what that feels like. Since I already had some turbo parts and boost is something that I really want to learn and mess around with, I decided to plan ahead and go with a dished piston so I can still run boost on pump 93 with a good enough tune. For a camshaft, we're trying something new. It's a company that I've never even heard of until I started looking into this build. My machinist has a lot of experience with these Ford motors, these Ford Windsor motors, and had a lot of great advice, and he had suggested going with a Howard's cam. It's a good size cam, but it is in fact still streetable. It has a 241, 247 duration at 50 with a 110 lobe separation. It's got 581 lift on the intake and 603 on the exhaust with a 1.6 roller rocker. What I'm really excited about this whole build is these cylinder heads that we went with. These are the ProMax Project X 210cc. They have a 208 intake valve, which is pretty big. I went with a 56cc combustion chamber with these Kinetic MLS head gaskets. Should put the compression ratio about 10-1, so be enough compression to keep it peppy. It won't be so high that I can't run it on pump 93 that I can find just about anywhere. I don't have to worry about finding super good gas. I want to be able to run this thing on basically bags of sand and dog water while still making good power and not feeling like a dog. In terms of the oiling system, I just went with a standard pressure, standard volume oil pump, and I'll be running a Moroso 7-quart road race pan. I decided to go with the more shallow road race pan over the deep sump, kind of more drag racing pan. My car is a lot lower than most. I feel like the deep sump pan would hang down a lot lower than I'm comfortable with around these New England roads. So that's it. That's my motor. Again, this is something that I've never done before. I've never built a motor from the ground up. This started off as a budget build that completely snowballed into building something that I've really always wanted to build, which is, to my standards, a fairly high horsepower engine. If you guys have any questions on more in-depth specs For any of that other technical information, feel free to post them down in the comments. The next time you see this motor, we're gonna be plopping it in that car and hearing it fire off. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it actually does fire off, because again, I've never done this before. So stay tuned for that video. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.